going all those places, I will be where my Father is, you know. I will be in my purpose, fulfilling it. So that to me. Hello everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Who's This Jesus Guy Anyway series. This one's called The Boy Jesus, and that's what we're talking about. Jesus when he was a boy. This is the only account we have of Jesus like after he was an infant, but before he was like a man. So this is it. He was 12 years old here, and I'm going to be reading out of Luke chapter 2, verse 41 to 52. Yes. The ESV, which is the English Standard Version. So the reason I'm going to be reading the entire thing is because I kind of have points on each verse. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, the boy Jesus in the temple. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. And when the feast was ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey, but then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem, searching for him. After 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. And when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been looking for you in great distress." And he said to them, "Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my father's house?" Or other versions say in my father's about my father's business. And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. And when he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them, and his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favour with God and man. Okay, so there's a lot to go into here. So one of the biggest points I kind of want to stress is that they went there during the Passover like feast celebrations. This was a Jewish custom, and this is important because this shows us that they followed the law, which is very important because part of Jesus's purpose on earth was to follow the Jewish laws to perfection, all of them, fulfill them and follow them to perfection in order for him to be a perfect sacrifice for us, for our transgressions, so that we wouldn't have to do those laws and follow those laws anymore. And so even his parents took him to the Jewish Passover every year, as they kind of said there, and they went with him and they made sure that he knew and he understood the customs. He was circumcised, you know, and he followed all the Jewish laws, which is very, very important because then if he didn't do that, his purpose would only be partially fulfilled. And so another point I wanted to make is that he asked questions, you know, he sought out the teachers, he sought out the temple, he went to the temple, he stayed behind, he sought out the teachers, he spoke to them, he sat with them, he listened to them, he asked them questions, and he answered them, and he sat among them. This to me was insane because, I mean, Jesus is God in human form, basically. And so the fact that he actually does say that he grew in wisdom, it doesn't say he just had wisdom. And so this is a big deal to me because this stresses that it's important to study God's word. It's important to study God's nature, to pray, to learn about him, to ask others about him, to ask, you know, people who are perhaps in the ministry or have had a relationship with God longer than you. If Jesus did it, you know, obviously, you know, I would have to do it. This really drove me and motivated me. And so it's very important to recognize that Jesus was human, you know, because he could have came all-knowing. He could have came they call it omniscient, which is all-knowing. He could have came omniscient, and he could have come completely full of the knowledge of God and completely developed spiritually, but he didn't. He was learning, he was asking questions, and so I think that was pretty cool. and he was like hungry to learn. And because in Philippians 2:6-7 he says, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. This indicates that this was a choice Jesus made, right? So in John it does say Jesus was with God in the beginning. So before he was born physically, he was actually, with God in the spirit, because God is a spirit being. And so he made a decision before God sent him to be born physically and basically to restart life. He made a decision to empty himself, of being omnipresent, which is everywhere at the same time, like God is, being omniscient, knowing, being all-knowing. He decided to empty himself of all of these and be fully human. That's a choice he made beforehand, and that to me is insane, because he knew he was stripping himself of the advantage, if you could, of the power of being God on earth. So he knew that he would have challenges that are human, and he went into that willingly, knowing that in the end he was going to be crucified anyways. And instead of being like, you know what, let me make this trip a lot easier on myself and actually go down there with the advantages, I choose to go there completely human. That to me is insane. It just kind of magnifies his sacrifice and his crucifixion, because it means that he went in suffering more than he had to, or at least struggling in life more than he had to. So that is incredible to me. So another thing, and that was ironic, is that it says in one of the verses, I'm not entirely sure which one, but it says that they were astonished at Jesus, like at his answers, at his understanding of the word, of the things that they were saying to him and teaching him. And this is ironic because 18 years later, basically around about when Jesus is 30, when he begins his ministry, these same people, Pharisees, the Sadducees, these people, these teachers of the temple, priests if you may, they attack him, and they don't actually even want to listen to him, and they like oppositions to him, and to me this is crazy, because back then they clearly didn't take him seriously. Sure, they astonished, oh my word, he's like, wow, he's incredible, he's smart, his knowledge is amazing. But 18 years later, now that he's an adult, they see that as an opposition, they see that as an enemy, which goes to show that they never took him seriously. They didn't recognize fully who he was, what he was capable of, or why he was here. Then they didn't get it, they didn't see, they only saw years later, and they were afraid of that, and so they fought against him because he was kind of bringing out how hypocritical they were. So that is very, very ironic. A lot of people would be like, why did Jesus just stay behind and worry his parents? That's kind of like disregarding his parents' feelings, That's why did he some would say he was kind of breaking the commandment of honoring your mother and father, and I don't think so. The fact that they only realized that he was missing a day in their journey shows that they trusted him, shows that he wasn't a troublesome child. He wasn't a child who they always had to constantly worry about and keep their eye on, because it's like an entire day, 24 hours before they were like, oh my gosh, where's Jesus, and before they even turned back, they first looked for him within the other relatives and their acquaintances, because they probably maybe assumed first that he was playing with the other kids maybe, or just walking with the other relatives. So I think that's important to note, because it's I think Jesus at that time, it's actually very significant that he was 12. So in Jewish tradition, the 12th year is when you kind of are on your own, not kind of in terms of life and responsibilities and stuff, but in terms of your responsibility of the law, because now your parents are no longer going to intercede on your behalf when it comes to the law. They're no longer going to intercede on your behalf when you have to keep the law, the things that you have to obey, the laws you have to obey, the prayers, the sacrifices that you have to do. They've taught you all your life up until this year, or your 12th year, and this year is the year where it's okay, it's your final year, next year you're on your own, because we've taught you everything you need to know, and now you can basically interact with God through the law on your own. You don't need us. And the fact that he chose a specific year, because they go there for the Jewish for the Passover celebration, they go there every year, and so he chose specifically the 12th year to stay back in the temple with these teachers and to learn more about the word and to learn more about them. That was a decision he made, and I think that is very significant to mention. And so it's like, so this 12th year thing is called like a bar mitzvah, which I actually heard about it before, but I didn't really know what was up with that. So it's a Jewish thing where this is, it means son of commandment. You now understand the commandments, you now understand the law, and you're on your own basically. And so what I found a cool thing where they were like, it was I'll put the link on the description box. The link to this article that I read. It was very cool. I got a lot of this actually from it, or it helped me kind of bring everything together. It's from desiringgod.com. I think that's their thing, but I'll find it and I'll put it down. And this man, the author, made a kind of a perfect example of how, like, the relationship between Jesus when he was a boy and the teachers, the Pharisees in the temple, and when he was a man. So he's like, so it's like, okay, a boy when he's young, right? He goes to a camp, and this camp, it's a salvation camp, for kids in the summer, and he gets saved there. He finds Jesus, right? And then he comes back to his unsaved father, right, who he lived with, obviously his father, and tells him all about this excitedly, explaining it, and his father's like, smiles condescendingly. He's like, oh, this is a good thing for a boy to have, an imaginary friend, and lets it go. But as the boy gets older, becoming more passionate in the word, stronger in the word, making life decisions based off of the word, based off of God, what God says, tensions start to rise, because now the opposition of how they live their lives has become so much more clearer. And so that's where the issue grows, and it's like conversion or annihilation. Like, do they separate, or does the father concede and starts listening to his son? And so that was kind of how it was between Jesus and the Pharisees. It's like, when he was younger, they was like, so smart, all condescending. But as he got older, they saw him as an opposition, and he was kind of a mirror to them, to kind of show them who they really were, how hypocritical they were. But he also was like, there's time and there's ways for you to change. There's a path for you to go to become different. So, yeah. Can we just note that the fact that their parents, so I searched this and I found out that the distance between where his parents were, like the day's journey, and where he was in Jerusalem, it was about like 680 kilometers, which is about a little over 5-hour drive, right? So obviously there was no car back then, so they were most likely walking. So it's insane that it took them that long to just realize that Jesus was missing, and they were taking that distance. And so when Jesus says in verse 49, why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? And other versions say must be about my Father's business. So to me, I was like, okay, I get what he's saying, but I still dug a bit into it, and there's different kind of points on this. But I thought this was very deep, because this year, the year of his confirmation, of his bar mitzvah, the 12th year, the final year of him being under his parents' kind of authority in terms of the law, he made a decision. I think he recognized his unique relationship with God. He recognized fully his purpose and his mission in life. That year, he finally saw that he would time and time again have to pick his purpose and his mission over his family ties, over his responsibility to others maybe. He realized that it was his sole purpose, and he's like, my Father's house, God is my Father. He recognized that, he saw that. I think that was really cool, because I feel the time that he finally conceded 100% to his identity in God. You know, he actually recognized that, okay, this is my God, this is my Father, I'm in his home, you know. And he was like about my Father's business, which is listening to God's word, understanding him, learning more about him. This was mind-blowing all to me, because it was also probably very painful for Mary, because when he was in the temple, Jesus, when he was a baby to get circumcised, a man named Simeon had came up to them and prophesied that a sword will pierce your heart, Mary, right? And obviously initially we all like, oh, this is talking about the crucifixion, when Jesus would be killed, would be crucified on the cross. But I think he was also speaking about this moment right here, because some translations, when she was like, your father and I have been searching for you anxiously, some translations say we were searching for you in pain, right? Because they were searching for him for 3 days. That's a lot of time to search for a person. And so they were in pain, they were in fear, they were scared, but it also really hurt Mary's heart, because there was a chance that, you know, she might not find a child. I think that obviously there was that fear. And so I think that was horrible, because it's her mother to her son, but it's also a kind of a fulfillment, a type and shadow of a fulfillment of the crucifixion, and an example of what Mary has to go through a lot of Jesus's time on earth, especially 30 years on when he starts his ministry. She has to deal with that separation from him, knowing that he's not going to be here on earth forever, and he's going to leave her at some point. I think that was just so sad. And it just kind of shows and emphasizes the sacrifice she too made, you know, because she had to let him go. She had to know that, okay, this is his purpose, and, you know, I have to let him go. So that was insane. And how he was also like, where did you search me? Like, you know, why were you searching for me? I think also he's kind of like, where did you go? Like, to like what, to the playground, maybe to the pools, where did you go? I mean, obviously I'd be where my father is, you know, this is me, this is my purpose. Again, the emergence of identity. He's like, don't bother going all those places, I will be where my father is, you know, I will be in my purpose, fulfilling it. So that to me was also insane. And another thing that I think was important, because Luke is the author of Luke, obviously. Luke says in Luke chapter 2 verse 51, he says he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them, and his mother treasured up all these things in her heart. So it's kind of a question of like, okay, why did he mention this, you know, and stuff like that. And so I think a part of the reason why he mentioned that he was submissive to them, which means he was obedient to them, was again a fulfillment of, you know, he was following the commandment of Moses to honor your mother and father, which was a law, part of the law, of the Jewish law. And it also just wants to, I feel like he also kind of wanted to say, yes, he stayed behind and he married his parents, but this was not his intention. He just had a greater purpose above, you know, walking back with them. He had to learn, he had to grow in wisdom and in knowledge. And so Luke is trying to be like, he follows them, he obeys them, you know, he listens to them, he's being a child, you know. This is also an important thing to notice, is that he's a child. He was a child and he was 12 years old, and he recognized that, but he also recognized that, okay, I'm growing out of that soon, and I have a purpose that overshadows that. And so it's pretty cool. And the fact that he says Mary stored up these things in her heart, I think part of this means that he's trying to be like, this is kind of where we got our narrative. This is the person who told us what happened, Mary, because she stored it up, basically keeping memories. And so the only way he would know that she was storing it up would be if she told him. And she possibly is the one who probably told them what had happened, you know, and they wrote this down for us thousands of years later. And so I just really, this for me specifically, this video, like doing the research for this video, was kind of a bit emotional and stuff like that, because I recognized the sacrifice Jesus made became so much more enlarged because it's deep rooted from a time way back, you know. It's kind of similar to how you would, you know, see a superhero be burdened by the fact that they have powers and they can't simply just sit back and not save their city or their country or wherever they are, knowing that they have the powers. They can't just let the villains, you know, take over and do whatever they want. But at the same time, they yearn for a normal life. They yearn for a life that is regular, you know, and they can't have that. They can't have perhaps relationships and stuff like that. I mean, we see others that they do, but a lot of the times you find that superhero lives are lonely, and that's what Jesus was. He was a superhero for humanity. As much as a lot of people, they don't recognize that, they don't believe that, but he was a superhero for the entire of humanity, and that was an insane sacrifice. That was so heavy, a life that I assume did get lonely sometimes and just so burdening. So yeah, we'll talk a bit about that in, you know, his ministry, because there are times where he had to deal with stuff and he actually showed emotion of just not wanting to do some of the things sometimes. But yeah, so thank you so much guys for watching this video. I hope you really liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it taught you something. I hope it made you cry a bit, or just made you want to cry a bit, because I did. And yeah, and also I just want to say before you go, for whoever wants to be saved, whoever wants to become a Christian, I'm planning on doing this at the end of all my videos. You know, out of Romans, there's a scripture for this, which is Romans 10:9 to 10. I'm going to read it till the 10th verse, 9 and 10, which says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For with the heart one believes and is justified, and with the mouth one confesses and is saved. And so that's just it. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus, I believe that you're Lord, I believe that you're God, you know, that you're sovereign, and you know, I believe in my heart that you died for me, that's all you need, because through the heart one is justified. You're justified, you know, you have right standing with God, you have an opportunity to have relationship and intimacy with him through that. So that's literally all you need to do, is to confess with your mouth that you believe, and believe it in your heart, because that's what you need to do. And if you did do that, please email me. I think I'll put the link to my email address, or the pages, the channel's email address, which is at theagapemovement@gmail.com. And you guys can just email me if you have any questions, if you want to know anything about being, you know, Christian, being born again. There's a lot that you need to learn, you know, Bible study, things like that. A lot of confusion, praying and stuff like that, and hopefully I can help you. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. Bye.